Last time on AI Wasn't Made to Do This, we took ChatGPT and Google's Gemini through the tutorial of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Well, we tried anyway. It's fair to say that neither AI did a great job of beating the game, let alone the tutorial. But to be fair, would you expect it to? Majora's Mask is 3D, it has puzzles, and some parts of the game change depending on if it's day or night. Could the AIs have done better? Of course. But could they have done worse? Yeah. So let's give AI something it should be good at. A game with strategy, a game where thinking is more important than executing, and a game that doesn't make you solve puzzles at the start of the game, thank goodness. Let's start with what the AI will actually be doing. In Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, you have to challenge 8 gyms and then make your way to the Elite Four. And if the video's length is anything to go by, that isn't what I'm making the AI do. The AI has to beat both Brock and Misty, the first 2 gym leaders of the Kanto region. I went with both of them because just Brock isn't much of a challenge. The AI could pick Bulbasaur or Squirtle and have no problems. It could even get by with Charmander, thanks to Metal Claw. But when you throw Misty in the challenge as well, only one starter really makes sense to go with. If it picks Charmander, it's going to end up with a pretty useless Pokemon against Misty. Squirtle is manageable, but it would want to get a Pikachu in Viridian Forest or a Grass type somewhere along the way. Now let's talk about which AI I'll be taking through this experiment. Last time we used ChatGPT and Gemini. Neither one completed the objective of that experiment, but Gemini has a fun mix of being far worse and also being pushed far more. It needs a lot of help to be the Google Assistant replacement that Google seems to think it can be, so let's either help it to improve, or at least show Google why it's not ready to be a selling point. And finally, let's talk about how I'll be using Gemini, including its fail condition. The first big change is that I won't be restarting the chat. AI has a tendency to get stuck in its own head and give wrong information based on what it thinks reality is. And Gemini does this really badly. You can clear the AI brain rot by restarting the chat, but I won't be doing that. If Gemini is going to deteriorate over the course of the chat and it won't progress any further, that's how it loses. So Gemini, you're playing Pokemon Leaf Green. You have to beat Brock and Misty. Which starter do you pick? Considering the upcoming gym battles, I'd choose Bulbasaur. Now this is actually not a bad response. This is actually a very good start. It's picking Bulbasaur, it's using strategy. It's a little bit off because it's referring to Brock's rock-type Pokemon, including Rhyhorn. I don't think Brock has ever used a Rhyhorn. Oh, apparently he used a Rhyhorn in Pokemon Gold and Silver, so... It's not a terrible response, it's just not correct in the context of this game, which it should know. Let's give it a nickname, how about Ivy? Now it's time for Gemini's first battle. And if you were worried it would be too smart for this game, since the rival likely has a fire-type starter, Ivy's grass type will give us a significant advantage. Use Vine Whip to deal damage and potentially weaken their Pokemon. If necessary, use Tackle as a backup attack. So far, Gemini has gone from being pretty smart to doing what everyone knows it for. But you might be surprised to hear that when it came to the rival fight, Gemini actually won. You should be surprised because it didn't. Gemini wanted to use Tackle and Growl, along with some potions. Potions that it did not have. After this, Gemini wanted to get the Pokédex and Pokéballs from Professor Oak and go to Route 22. This was a dangerous place for Gemini to be in. Remember, it fails the challenge if it won't make any progress, and the information it gave me was not usable. Thankfully, it managed to be just useful enough to keep going. Exit Palatown, head north out of town and onto Route 1. Follow the path, continue north along Route 1 until you reach a fork in the road. Turn right. Take the right fork and follow the path until you reach Viridian City. Exit Viridian City, leave Viridian City by the north gate. Head east, follow the path east until you reach Route 22. That's a lot of stuff that it wants me to do for one response. I'm not sure what fork it's talking about. Like, it could be here. This is arguably a fork in the road. So I went along Route 1 until I came across a Rattata. When I told Gemini about it, it told me to catch it. When I informed Gemini that we don't have any Pokeballs, it replied as helpful as ever. Return to Professor Oak's lab. Speak to Professor Oak and ask for more Pokeballs. I managed to get Gemini to deal with the rat still in front of it, and then I went to Professor Oak's lab. It didn't help, and then we tried going up Route 1 again and encountered another Rattata. And it tried to catch this one too. Eventually, Gemini did reach Viridian City, and thankfully it forgot about its obsession with Route 22, and wanted to buy some Pokeballs. But its mission to buy Pokeballs was intercepted by the need to take a package from the Pokemart to Oak's lab. Alright, let's deliver the parcel to Professor Oak. Return to Pallet Town, head to Professor Oak's lab, give the parcel to Professor Oak. What? Gemini won't be needed for this. Then things got weird. Gemini said to go to Viridian City, and then go to Route 22. Along the way, Gemini encountered a Rattata on Route 1, and when trying to catch it, Ivy fainted, taking us back to Pallet Town. Yeah, Gemini panicked and lost $48, and that's all Gemini does. Panic and lose money. Return to Route 22. Encounter and catch the Rattata. We can't guarantee that, Gemini. So it's telling me when I get to Viridian City to go north? That's not how I get to Route 22. In case you don't know, Route 22 is this route here, and Gemini actually isn't that far off. Route 22 is connected to Viridian City, but you need to go west, not north. And Route 22 isn't actually our goal. If we go to Route 22, we'll fight our rival, who I named Artists, because no one has to deal with AI more than people who make art. On the road to Viridian City, Gemini caught a Pidgey and named it Soar, and a Rattata that it named Nibble. Gemini then reached Viridian City, healed its Pokemon, bought some supplies, and told me to go to the Viridian City Gym. The Pokemon Center often has a Pokemart attached to it. You can buy items like Pokeballs, potions, and other useful supplies. That is not true of this generation, so no. Now this is the part where I don't know how it's going to handle this. I'll go to the gym. First I'm gonna have to do the tutorial. But I'm gonna go to the gym, and it's gonna be unfightable. Like, I won't be able to go into the gym. So I'm not sure how it's gonna react to that, because I don't think it tells me who the gym leader is. So it might think, oh, you have to go to Route 22 and then unlock the ability to fight Brock, and that's not what you're supposed to do. So to unlock the Viridian City Gym, you need to defeat the rival Gary in a battle. Go north along Route 22, look for Gary, and then battle Gary. So what it's saying there isn't completely false. It's mostly false, but you do battle Gary on Route 22, or your rival. But I went north and I'm on Route 2, not Route 22, so I apologize for the oversight. To find Gary, you need to head south from Viridian City. Exit Viridian City, follow the path, continue south until you reach Route 2. Look for Gary. Gary should be somewhere along Route 2. At this point, Gemini got confused. I said that leaving to the south took me to Route 1. It corrected its instructions to say I would find Gary on Route 2 by going west from Viridian City. When I told it that the west exit leads to Route 22, it said to exit to the south until I reached Route 2. I said Route 1 led to Pallet Town, and I asked if I needed to go further south to reach Route 2, and it said yes. Eventually, it told me to explore Route 2 until I find Gary. That'll never happen, but we can still make progress while I quote-unquote look for Gary. Namely, we discover the first big hurdle of the challenge. Viridian Forest is the first time Gemini can't just tell me to stumble north. There are winding paths that intersect with one another. At the start of the forest, Gemini can go east, north, or west. North and west lead to the same area, and they're both useless in the long run. If Gemini goes east, it's actually basically done. The east path turns to the north, and then all the branching paths end up leading out of the forest. But does Gemini know this?
Viridian Forest is a great place to catch a new Pokemon and level up your team. Here's what you should do. Explore Viridian Forest, wander around the forest, and encounter wild Pokemon. Catch a new Pokemon, level up your team. Okay. This isn't bad information, but I need something more specific. Let's explore Viridian Forest in more detail. Head north until you encounter a trainer. Defeat the trainer, battle the trainer, and their Pokemon. Continue north. This is interesting. Go north until I encounter a trainer. So there's this guy. But it's not him.
At this point, I have two options. Either I can show you every move Gemini made in this stupid forest, or I can save some of your time by abridging, honestly speaking, over an hour. Gemini gave some very useful advice.
Okay, so throw a Pokeball, and if it doesn't work, give up. Oh, it broke out. I guess we gotta run away from it. Wouldn't want to level up our starter Pokemon.
Got a Caterpie, which it named Leaf.
Welcome to the team. Useless worm.
Caught another Caterpie and named it Twig, and had its first encounter with another trainer that isn't the rival. And if you think I brushed over Gemini's new Pokemon, at least I remembered to mention them.
Okay, we have Bulbasaur, Leaf, Soar. Is that it? I thought we had more than that. We have more than that, dude. We have Twig and Nibble. Goodness gracious, you can't forget about Twig and Nibble.
And Gemini is bad with types.
Let's swap Pokemon. Send out Leaf. Since Caterpie is effective against grass-type Pokemon, like Weedle.
A few failed catches later, I gave it a devastating piece of information. It had run out of Pokeballs. But surprisingly, it managed to give me even more devastating information.
Return to Viridian City.
For reference, Gemini was here, and this nice big building here is the way out of the forest. If Gemini could just get there, it can buy Pokeballs in the next town. Of course, I tried to reason with it.
Oh no.
And that didn't work.
I can plead with it all I want. It doesn't matter. We're going to Viridian City. The thing that worries me is that it wants to buy Pokeballs and potions. We don't have much money. Like, we've beaten a few trainers, so we're not doing too badly, but yeah, we only have 304. That's like one Pokeball. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that Gemini has a fail condition, and if it keeps going around in circles, it's not going to succeed. It won't fight, or it won't beat Brock, it won't beat Misty, it won't progress through the game anymore. So, what worries me is that Gemini is going to say, buy some Pokeballs, we're going to go back into the forest, it's going to have me waste the Pokeballs again, and then it's going to tell me to go back to Viridian City. And I'm going to say, we don't have any money, and it's going to keep going around in a circle.
So I bought the one Pokeball it could afford, and asked for its next objective.
It wants me to explore the forest and encounter a wild Pokemon, and then use its one Pokeball to catch the one Pokemon we find. It could be a Caterpie. We don't need another Caterpie. We don't need another Caterpie.
Gemini named it Twiggy. From there, Ivy learned Vine Whip, and Gemini managed to exit Viridian Forest. The next objective was to heal up, and
prioritize Pokeballs and potions. Purchase as many Pokeballs as you can afford. If you have any Pokedollars left, purchase potions. That's a really redundant response. If you buy as many Pokeballs as you can afford, you can't afford anything else.
And now it's time for the first real challenge for Gemini to deal with. Honestly, I wasn't sure what to think going into this fight. Gemini wasn't exactly smart with type matchups, or knowing which Pokemon were what types. And considering Ivy's level was lower than both of Brock's Pokemon, I really thought Gemini was walking into a death trap. But it pulled out a victory, and it didn't even struggle. But the journey isn't over yet. Route 3 is full of trainers, but the route itself is pretty simple. The real challenge is Mount Moon. Viridian Forest is a piece of cake compared to what Mount Moon is like. Tons of dead ends, and the cave is filled with encounters. But, Gemini seems to be having issues.
Okay. Exit Pewter City, leave Pewter City by the north gate. Continue north along Route 4.
Well, it's only one mistake.
To leave Pewter City and head towards Cerulean City, you need to go west. You need to go south. Now, it's telling me to go along Route 4. I believe that it's actually going to be Route 3, not Route 4. To leave Pewter City and head towards Cerulean City, you need to go north. There is no exit north. You need to go east. East! It's east. Okay, we're good now. It tried all 5 directions on a compass and finally got it right.
Thankfully, Gemini did realize we wanted Route 3, and it made some good progress against some of the trainers. But after Leaf evolved into a Metapod, Gemini's memory started to deteriorate.
My active Pokemon is Metapod, so it knows that. Both Caterpie are bug type, so neither has a significant type advantage. That's weird. It knows that I have a Metapod, or it has a Metapod. Leaf's health low, assuming Leaf fainted. Switch to Metapod. Since Leaf has fainted, switch to Metapod. Switch to Metapod. Your active Pokemon, Metapod. Leaf's status, fainted. Metapod can use Tackle. Okay, consider switching to Leaf. We're going to switch to Leaf, and we can't.
Thanks to Gemini not realizing we could go back to the Pokemon Center, all of its Pokemon fainted. After that, Gemini thought we would wake up in Palatown. The good news is that we don't. We end up back in the Pokemon Center in Pewter City. What would have wasted potential hours of getting back to Route 3 was actually only a few seconds. At least, if it can navigate back to Route 3.
Exit Pewter City, leave Pewter City by the north gate. Continue north along Route 4. You need to go south. You need to go west. North. You need to go east.
And this is where Gemini's run ends. Gemini actually kept going several more spins around the compass, but it wouldn't shake the idea that it needed to reach Route 4. Could I have pushed Gemini in the right direction? Yeah, but that isn't the point. The point is to see how far Gemini can get in a game that should be manageable for it. If I need to tell it where the right direction is, that's just me playing the game with extra steps. So let's consider how Gemini actually did. While Gemini got half of the required badges, I'd argue that it didn't do half the work. I'll say it reached 40% of its total goal. It would still need to navigate through Mount Moon, which is much harder than Viridian Forest. And if Gemini couldn't figure out how to manage its team's health when a Pokemon Center was 20 seconds away, it would struggle when it's halfway through the cave. If all you want is for it to accomplish the goal, it got closer than I expected. But don't forget that it caught 3 Caterpie, and it would have caught more if it didn't run out of Pokeballs. I can't say I'm impressed, but I can say Gemini surprised me. I expected a complete train wreck, and while it didn't complete its objective, and it did as well as it did with 0 elegance, it did complete a big part of its objective. But maybe my expectations were lowered a bit, since this wasn't my first attempt. Before I did this attempt, I did the exact same challenge. The goal was to beat Brock and Misty without restarting the conversation. But Gemini had a problem. And I don't mean in the usual AI way, I mean the servers were having issues, and since I wasn't saving conversations, I had to start the chat over and fill it in on what was going on. It wasn't very authentic, and I didn't feel good about publishing it. but I did finish the test.